YouTube Ozick Owen, the Goat House is back with some realistic NFL trade scenarios as we approach the regular season. That roster deadline day is coming up. There's going to be cuts, trades. So some of these could happen. Realistic scenarios here. Recent video going over the trade candidates and landing spots and more. Also a cut candidates video. And we got all kinds of NFL content here, especially in season. Cannot wait for that content. Join us, like, subscribe, to notifications on. Always talking about trade rumors, news, things like that on our Twitter. Link put in the comments for that, other social media accounts, and our sponsors, Liquid IV, code GOAT 20% off. Let's talk about some scenarios here. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire we talked about as a possible candidate. The Chiefs could just decide to keep him because when he's on the field, he's pretty solid for them. But the Colts could be in need of a running back. Obviously with the Jonathan Taylor situation, whether they trade him or they don't, maybe he holds out, doesn't suit up for them. So Edwards-Helaire could be an option for the Colts. How about the Vikings as well? They've been looking for running backs, other teams. 2024 fifth round pick I had going back to the Chiefs. The question is, would the Chiefs accept that? Would they rather just keep him? Would they need a fourth round pick? Would a team pay that? So somewhere around that range, but I thought is a shot he could get dealt before the season starts, and I thought the Colts made sense as a landing spot. Next, Jerry Hughes. Talked about him in the can. We talked about all these guys in the candidates videos. This guy was talked about the trade deadline last year as well, and I thought the Chiefs were an option at that time, and the Chiefs are a strong option again. They are in need of a defensive end, and their 4-3 defense Hughes fits that very well. A lot of young players that could step up, but they also have Charles Omenihu who got suspended. So even with him, it feels like they could have used the guy. He's suspended for a little bit, so they could definitely use the guy. And the Texans could look to move him for the right price. They didn't want to move him at the deadline last year, so it's interesting, but I believe Will Anderson and Jonathan Grenard will be starting, so that makes him a legit trade candidate. And I thought the Chiefs made, for the reasons I explained, made sense as a landing spot. Tyler Higby, I've talked about him. The Rams making some surprising moves with long-time veterans, like key players of their team. They could be going in some sort of rebuild mode, so they could look to move Higby, play some of the younger tight ends. The Bengals make a lot of sense. There's other teams that made some sense, Commanders, as well. But the Bengals, I just love the fit. Zach Taylor's offense, they loved Hayden Hurst last year. He was a key piece, especially down the stretch. They have other tight ends that have some upside, but there's, no comfortable option there. I think Higby would be a fantastic fit and can make a serious contender, more of a serious contender there. So, love that fit. Absolutely love it. So the Rams could be looking to get more picks. Fourth round pick. Could he go for a fifth? Possibility there. But this made some sense to me. So I like that one a lot. So we'll see what happens with Higby. Not really talked about in the NFL world right now in terms of being a trade or cut candidate, but I'm talking about him. So we'll see. Next, La'el Collins. So speaking of the Bengals, again, they could be starting. We know they're going to start Orlando Brown Jr. at left tackle, but for right tackle, Jonah Williams could be the guy. So La'el Collins, would he be okay with being a backup? Probably not. The Jets are looking for some help for sure. They have injury concern, and they kind of just need help at the tackle position. I know La'el Collins, another durability guy, concern guy, but the more help, the better here for the Jets. He can plug and play at right tackle, could make them better. Does he last the season? But at least they got other, maybe Becton's ready by that time. And the Jets are, all the chips are in. They're ready to win right now. So I think they'd be willing to do this. So a fourth round pick made some sense going back to Cincinnati. So I had Cincinnati twice here, and I'm trading a fourth round for Tyler Higby and then trading La'el Collins for a fourth round pick. So that'd be something if they can make some moves like that. Two serious contenders here on the Jets and the Bengals. Next, Jordan Lewis, I think could be he's a serious cut or trade candidate. Very good slot corner, good in man coverage. The Cowboys have options at the position now, and then Lewis was injured last year, so they can free some space by moving on from him. Teams are desperate for corners. I think the Vikings are one of them. The Ravens, another one. Could see either one of those teams. The other teams as well, but I really could see either one of those teams. The Vikings trying to run a lot more man coverage under Brian Flores, so that's why it made sense. Jordan Lewis being pretty solid man. So the Vikings get Jordan Lewis, and the Cowboys get a 2024 sixth-round pick. That could be one of the guys they cut if they can't trade. So a little bit cheaper, could be a bargain for a team. But yeah, Vikings and Ravens really stand out. Ravens stand out for a lot of guys here. But Corey Davis, another one. I like the Lions for him. Lions they're trying to win right now too. a sneaky team, I want to call them, in terms of in need of a receiver, because they have a great one in Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they have other options that are pretty good. Marvin Jones, pretty solid. Where is he at? He's maybe declining a little bit. He's up there in age, but he's solid. Josh Reynolds been sneaky good for them. But they don't have like that legit other option. And Jameson Williams, they think, could be that guy, but suspended. Obviously dealt with some injuries as well. So I didn't think, they brought in Denzel Mims. He had an injury. They moved on from him. So I think they can use another piece. They have a lot of cap space as well. That's kind of the issue with Corey Davis. Going to cost $10.5 million. It's a lot cleared for the Jets. Could they pay a portion to help a team out if a team doesn't want to pay $10.5 million? But then would the Jets rather just cut him and free all that space? So that's kind of the question there. That makes it a little tricky. But the Lions, I actually think, could use a receiver here. And this is a guy with, outside, inside versatility. And they would play him more outside, obviously, with Amon-Ra St. Brown on the inside. But thought that made some sense. I like that scenario a lot here. But we talked about him in the candidates video. He's a cut candidate, trade candidate. A lot of good options for Corey Davis. Ravens, I bring up a bit here. We talk about Jordan Lewis. I had Vikings as a scenario, but it definitely could be the Ravens. Could they be in? I thought about putting Kenny Moore. Could they be in on Kenny Moore, but a little pricey for a guy like when Marlon Humphrey comes back. Does he take a spot? So a little tricky there. But Isaiah Simmons could be available, a linebacker DB hybrid. That's been underwhelming. Hasn't worked with the Cardinals, hasn't worked out very well. So he could be on the move. Still has some upside. The Ravens like trading for the guys in an expiring deal, getting the most out of them. They drafted a similar style linebacker from Clemson, Trenton Simpson. So maybe kind of the style of guy they're looking for more of those cover guys at the position, guys they can kind of get creative with, kind of the hybrid player. Hamilton, safety that they kind of play in the slot area a lot last year. Does he play more safety reps? Could they use Simmons for, around the slot to man up on guys? Can they get creative? I can see it there. So 5th round pick to the Cardinals for Isaiah Simmons. A little bit more of a bolder one, but I like the Ravens for a lot of these guys because they're the type of team that trades for these guys in an expiring deal and then seeing how they play. Do they extend him or do they let him walk for a compensatory pick? So, talk about Jordan Lewis, talk about Kenny Moore. We'll talk about Jonathan Taylor. The Ravens are a team to watch. Quite a few teams we mentioned a few times here. But in a smaller one here, Josh Jones, speaking of the Cardinals, they've kind of replaced him, and he's had some reps at both tackle spots and guard. So teams might, he's not the best offensive lineman in the world, but he's pretty solid, young, upside with experience. That Kingsbury system was a little different, so maybe get him in the right system. I know Kingsbury is gone, but that's kind of what he's played in. So get him the right system. So I definitely think there'll be some takers, because he won't be overly expensive. I definitely think there'll be some takers. I really thought the Patriots here, if the Jets if they can't land the bigger name, watch out for the Jets. Again, the Patriots made some sense, but the Titans made the most sense to me. The reason I almost didn't go the Titans and almost went a different team is they are very, very limited on draft picks this upcoming draft. So we did include a 2025 pick. That is the tricky part. But the Titans kind of made these moves in the past. I know they did switch their GM. But they've kind of made these moves for kind of the upside, under the radar offensive lineman. Dennis Daly last year, which didn't work out, but they're a type of team that would make these moves, and they're looking for a right tackle. And Nicholas Petit-Frere suspended again. He'll be back at some point at that right tackle spot, but they also are just really thin on guys at that spot. Release Jamarco Jones. They're really thin at that spot, but he also has that guard experience, which they like. They like the versatility, Tennessee. So. For him to be able to play left or right tackle, play guard, even if he isn't the best, but he has upside. Could they eventually move Skoronski back out the tackle? Could they use Jones at guard? Or they want Skoronski to work at guard. I think he can be a Pro Bowl player there. But I'm kind of just giving all these different scenarios on why the Titans make some sense. So this is like kind of an under-the-radar one, kind of not a huge name, but it made some sense. Cardinals looking for picks. They're looking to go with Humphreys and Paris Johnson Jr. there at the tackle position, but so we'll see. That was an interesting one. Now to talk about what everyone, a lot of people might be waiting for. Jonathan Taylor. I got 2 scenarios, technically 3, because there's 2 teams on this one. The 2 teams I talked about in the candidates video, the 2 teams that stand out the most right away. And this is an interesting take because it's the Ravens and the Dolphins. And why it's interesting is because if Jonathan Taylor does, which right now it looks like he wants a new deal, right? That's what it looks like. But maybe just to, because the Colts aren't a contender right now and he's not happy with how they're acting, how Irsay's acting with them. Maybe he'd be like, all right, if I go to a good team, a contender, I actually don't need the long-term contract right now. So if that is the case, he doesn't need it. These two teams are the teams to watch in my eyes. They are the two teams. But if he says, no matter where I go, I need that contract ASAP, I would almost remove these two teams. So they're at the top for me. But if that's the case, they're almost not even, they don't go to the bottom. They almost get removed because the Ravens, I don't think they're going to pay big money long-term on a running back. They just paid big money on Lamar Jackson and Roquan Smith anyways, but mainly I just don't think they're going to pay long-term on a running back. And the Dolphins, they are very, very limited on the cap space, so it'd be tough to be able to do that. I don't know if they value that position that much anyways. I know he's different than Dalvin Cook, but they got outbid by the Jets for Dalvin Cook. So these would be teams that try him out for 1 year. If he's outstanding, then they could extend him, try to work out a deal. Maybe it has to be a little bit team-friendly, but maybe get that compensatory pick. These teams would be okay using him for this year as they contend, get the future compensatory pick, losing him in free agency. So those two teams are kind of in the same boat for me. They're in the same page, same boat. And this is what I think the compensation could look like. They want a first-round pick or equal value. I think this is like equal value, like kind of right there. 2 seconds and a third. So it could be around that range. Could it be a second? And McCaffrey was a second, 2, 3, 4, 5. Could it be the same? Could it be a 2 and 2 threes and maybe a 5? Something like that. You see I have two 2025 picks in there. The Dolphins are short on picks this year, so that would be more the compensation, specific exact compensation with the Dolphins. Ravens, it could be a 2024 for that second and the third, and then a 2025 second. So kind of keep those things in mind there. But this is kind of what made sense to me. But again, there's multiple things. Who's going to be interested? Do the Colts really want to trade him? Will they trade him for this price? What price would they trade him for? But the biggest thing to me is, does he decide, does he give the okay, I'll go to a new team and I won't need a new contract ASAP? That's a huge factor for me. So these two teams are teams I don't think they would give him a contract right away, but they would love to have him. Another one that I kind of talked about, hinted at in the candidates video, is a very intriguing one. It's a weird one because the Panthers just signed Miles Sanders to the biggest running back contract of this free agency, which wasn't gigantic, but pretty decent sizable contract. But so that's what makes it weird. But it makes sense because right away, what do you see? You see Jonathan Taylor, Frank Reich, like that worked out so well in Indy. Yes to that, makes the Panthers better. But then you realize there's a coaching connection on the other side too. Shane Steichen was the Eagles' offensive coordinator last year. He is the Colts head coach running his offense. Miles Sanders, coming from the Eagles, was fantastic career year last year. What got him this contract? He fits Shane Steichen's offense. That's huge. Would the front office want Miles Sanders' contract? It's not super expensive, but it's a bigger running back contract, and they're anti-paying a much better running back in Jonathan Taylor. So would they be okay with taking on that Sanders contract? So that's the downside. Maybe this doesn't happen. And the Panthers are probably stoked about Miles Sanders. They just signed him. So another downside, but it is interesting. It makes sense at the same time for multiple reasons. So something along the lines of Miles Sanders a second, a third, or could it be even more? Because Miles Sanders' value is probably around a third, so could it be a little more expensive? Or do the Colts value him high? Do they want that contract? But maybe Steichen probably values him, so it kind of be. I think Steichen would do it, but maybe the front office wouldn't, because the contract that Sanders already. Maybe they'd be like, yeah, we'd rather pay a little bit more for Jonathan Taylor. Maybe it's more than a little bit more. That's the issue there. So. Those are some trade scenarios, and in the past we've actually hit some of these exactly. So really excited about that. About to see if any of these players get traded. There's gonna be some more surprises that even I don't expect. I love when that happens. It's a fun time of the year here before the season starts. So we'll have you covered fully on Twitter and on our channel here. So make sure you follow us on both. Turn those notifications on. Get ready for that in-season content. Cannot wait for that. Just can't wait for football in general. It's right around the corner. That is going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.